So next we're going to take a look at how these pieces are kind of orientated. Right now you can see they're not all straight, so they are being controlled, and they're being controlled by this orient attribute. So in the scatter line you've got this attributes section, and then we're generating this orient attribute which uses basically the normal. But if I turn that off, it's still kind of doing something. So there it's just using the normal that's already there, right? If we look at the attributes here, we've got this normal attribute which is on the points itself. Okay, so you can see that these are the normals, so the pieces are being aligned to these vectors. Okay, and I want to use that, so I'm going to change this to n, so it does, the orient attribute is set to n, which is the normal, and then I want to kind of play with that value a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is drop something called an attribute vop. Okay, and what an attribute vop is a way of writing VEX code, but without having to actually write it out. You use nodes to perform the same actions as you would do in code, but you don't need to know the functions. You just need to look for the correct node. Okay, so yeah, basically you drop an attribute vop. Let's go inside. Okay, double click, go inside, and it looks a bit different. Okay, it works in a bit of a different way. You've got basically attributes on the left coming in, so think about anything on the left here is kind of coming in from the top, and things on the right going out, and you have to have something going in to the right here for it to be, usable later on. So you need something coming in. So for example, we've got position here, and then it comes out to position again. Okay, so there's no change. But if I, for example, if I want to add something to the position, let's say, and then we drop a constant. This is just for demonstration. Okay, so I'm adding whatever the position of each of these is now, which is a vector. And if I add something to that, for example, 0.23, all of them are moving in 0.23. And because because I'm adding it to a vector, it's going to be moving in the positive direction of each axis. So it's going to go up x and z, by 0.5 and go up like that. Okay, so that's kind of the gist of how this works. But I don't want to work on position, so I'm going to delete that. I want to work on the normals, which will affect the position, the orientation of the pieces once they're on here. Okay, so I'm going to take something called a curl noise, which will basically gives you a kind of interesting looking noise. So the curl noise needs a position, and then we can just output that to the normal here, and then we can visualize that. So you can see the effect there. So if I turn this off, now it's using the position, but if I kind of bypass it by just putting the normal back in, that's the normals as they were, and this is our new normals. So it's just a bit more of an interesting kind of shape. If we push the frequency up a bit to 2, it's kind of a bit hard to see there, but I'll leave it like that. So if we go back now and look at the pieces, turn that off, you can see that they're kind of following that curl noise. You see these kind of swirls on the surface, right? But what I would like to do is kind of keep some of what was already there, which is if I go back up here, visualize the normals there. So these normals are related to the geometry, the original geometry, and I want to keep some of that, but also have some of the curl noise and kind of have an interesting blend between the two. And a way to do that is to use a cross product, right? So a cross product is basically you give it 2 vectors and you get a new vector. And if we kind of, let me think, how can I show you? If we come back out to the geometry level here, if I press D, go into guides and origin gnomon, then we can see this kind of x, y, and z. So if the 2 vectors we give it are x and z, then the cross product of that will be y. And vice versa, if we give it y and x, the cross product will be z. So any 2 vectors will give you one which is perpendicular to the other 2, basically. And they don't have to be at 90-degree angles to each other. They can be any vector and you'll get one which is, think about, if you have 2 vectors, 2 lines, they make a flat surface, and the cross product will be kind of sticking out from that, from that surface. Okay, so if we visualize that, it's kind of hard to see now. If we visualize the normal in a different way, so let me do that. Generate our own visualizer for the normals, and then we can just make it a bit shorter. There we go. Do that. Okay, so now it's kind of following the geometry, but a bit more interesting. And then if we take a look at the, turn that off, then we get something a bit more interesting, I think. Okay, so that's good. Okay, we'll leave that there for now. And then next, I think we can take a look at the color.